We are ready to talk about the Israel situation because he's kindly logged on to us. He's the head of research Israel at the Israel Defense and Security Forum, and his name is Or Yisakar. Or, welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me, Kevin.
Now, what do you make of... now, Israel is one of this country's oldest allies, and personally, I'm proud of that alliance, and it's always been a very happy alliance. What do you make of our current government, the Labour government, suddenly today, in Israel's hour of need, announcing that it will limit arms sales to your country?
Well, I'd say that for over 70 years, Israel has struggled to make its case to the international community that somehow it has a right to exist, even if some other countries would claim otherwise. And to be honest, at the very same day that 6 of our hostages are brutally murdered by Hamas in an underground tunnel in Gaza, the very same day you basically take away some of Israel's capabilities to defend itself. I think this is really patently absurd. But to be honest, let's face it, I think this decision reflected a willingness perhaps to appease parts in the UK who oppose Israel, perhaps to appease parts of the Arab world. Really does remind me of the 1950s. We saw how the Eisenhower administration really sort of I would say, wooed with the idea of laying arms embargo in Israel at some point as means to prevent it from defending itself in the Sinai Peninsula, and following the Six-Day War, the Charles de Gaulle arms embargo on Israel from France. And I think this just indicates just how much Israel is the most threatened country in the world, and it is the country that has the highest duty to start explaining its right to exist and its right to defend itself. I think at the end of the day, out of 350 licenses, this very small amount would probably amount to a willingness to appease, nothing more, nothing less. But I think it reflects a broader willingness not to confront evil when it faces you. And I would suspect no arms embargo would be laid on Ukraine in its war against Russia. It just tells you everything.
Can we just remind ourselves, obviously, your Prime Minister, Benjamin Netanyahu, has been given a big conference just a couple of hours ago, stating quite justifiably, I would suggest, that Hamas is going to pay a heavy price for the execution of those 6 hostages. Let's have a look at Mr. Netanyahu and what he was saying earlier.
And I would also like to once again repeat this evening, Israel will not stand silently doing nothing facing this massacre. Hamas will pay a very heavy price for that.
So, there's been a lot of protests against Netanyahu in Israel after these 6 hostages were so brutally killed, almost on the brink of being let out and suddenly executed. Really tragic story. Netanyahu taking it in the neck for over that. A lot of protests all over Europe. Can he hang on? Is he safe in his position as leader of Israel? And can we now expect, rather than the peace negotiations we've been hearing about for so long, that in fact aggression will be racked up against Gaza?
Well, I certainly hope so. They earned it. I do think that the Israeli public shares a certain anger that you might interpret it as rift from the outside. Seeing a couple thousand people protesting in Tel Aviv, and I understand the emotions. At the end of the day, this anger should be channeled toward Hamas. And what I saw yesterday that I didn't see before October 7 was actually a shared sense of responsibility. The Israelis, yes, they laid out their emotions and their anger, but there were also so many people who told me, you know what? Our anger should not be directed at one another at this time. You know, this fraternity should be leading us to a common anger against our enemy, who just executed 6 of our hostages. And think about it. They were held in a tunnel for 10 months, illegally, brutally, torture there. God knows what they did to them. And then a few minutes before, perhaps, or a few moments before being saved, that was so brutally executed. And I think this is really what the international community does not want to face. And I don't think they can fully understand Israelis at this point.
Don't you find, or I'm going to have to go in just a second, but it's the Labour Party, right? You know, we know the Labour Party's awkward history with anti-Semitism. And even in the run-up to the election, before Labour were elected to become our new government, you know, David Lammy, the then future Foreign Secretary, was droning on about recognising Palestine as a state. They've doubled down on that since being elected. Now they're talking about reducing the number of weapons we sell to Israel. I mean, it's predictable from a Labour government, is it? A kind of anti-Israel approach to this situation. Don't you find that tiresome and depressing?
Well, what I find tiresome and depressing is the overall ambience, and I think the need on the part of Israel to make its case to the UK, to the European Union, to the international community. You know, you understand so much better than I do in British politics. One thing I know that I think, you know, one thing should be shared and across party lines, that you know, Israel simply expects the UK to do its job and support it in its darkest hour. And to be honest, post 9/11, we all stood next to the United States. And I think at this point, it only shows you the sort of a litmus test where everybody in the world stands. You see Joseph Borrell, the outgoing EAS chief, the head of, let's call him the foreign minister of the European Union, basically going out of his way to say how we cannot appease Putin, how we need to increase arms to Ukraine, how there is we need to achieve victory at all costs. He really does give Churchillian speeches when it comes to Ukraine. And then exactly the same situation when it comes to Israel. He would say that we need to stop the killing by laying an arms embargo. So I really do think that the more we see the shared interest here to defeat evil, to defeat terrorism, I simply think that Israel is as an Israeli, I'm sitting here in Jerusalem telling you that we feel quite baffled by the very need to explain to the national community, but whether it be the UK or elsewhere, the very need to eradicate this evil before it strikes us again.
Just to assure you, or great to talk to you, but just to assure you, lots of us in this country still stand with Israel. We remember what happened on October the 7th. Thank you very much for your time. That's Or Yissachar, Head of Research at the Israel Defence and Security Forum.